Welcome to episode 3. Is anybody even listening to me with Joe McCorriston? Morning, Joe.
Yeah, morning, mate. How you doing?
All right, thank you. It's been a while for us, hasn't it? I reckon over a decade. I'm just going to briefly explain to people how we know each other. Because I was a teacher and you were a pupil in the same school. I don't think I actually taught you.
So,
I was trying to think about this. You didn't take my subject, did you?
This is how loosely you taught me. I remember it very clearly because those 2 years of my life were pertinent in many ways. You taught me for 2 weeks at the start of year 12 in psychology. And
you took the sensible route of dropping that.
I dropped it 2 weeks in. No fault of your own. I just wasn't prepared mentally for the whole of sixth form, if I'm being honest. I reckon the last time I saw you, it can't have been, but it would be a funny anecdote. I think you were sending me out the class, maybe.
I'd like to think that was the case. That would be possibly.
We can pretend that was
for
the
being
case.
thoroughly disinterested and needing to drop the subject. Yeah, after 2 weeks. Yeah. Let's introduce you. So, Joe McCorriston is a writer and performer from Morecambe who now resides in London. A decorated musician, 14 years in the industry, Joe has built a cult following through relentless touring around the world and learning to hone his sound on the way. Joe's an independent musician with a familiar yet original sound, writing pop songs for punk kids, and only with an acoustic guitar in his voice. In the new year, Joe is releasing a new record to add to his 5-album discography, which will include his new singles, Signs and Liquid Remedy. Interesting, Joe, you were one of when I said I'm going to set up this podcast, you were one of the first people I thought of bringing on for a specific reason. Because I had certain topics in my mind that I wanted to talk about. It's a podcast loosely about education and learning. And one thing I wanted to talk about was intrinsic motivation. You know, the idea that doing something for the satisfaction and love of doing it, as opposed to necessarily, initially at least, massive reward and outcome. So actually, I think you were in my top 3. And I must get Joe on, actually, because he can definitely talk about that. But also, I want to sort of ask people initially about school as well. What was school like for you?
Yeah, it's such a cliche answer. It was a bumpy ride, but I'm not going to pretend that I had it really rough. There were rough moments. Primary school, that's just a blot on the page. Like, I can't remember it that well, to be honest. But honestly, high school was good. I think I had a good time. When I compare to some other people who experienced different things, I think I came out on the fortunate side for sure. Like year 8, I was like, I reckon in year 8 was my least educationally productive year, because that's when I started my first band with a couple of guys, and then that was the start of the whole the musical interest thing. But for those guys, it was more of a fad, and for me, it was like an intrinsic. Oh, this is great. I really enjoy this, and so that's where the focus for ulterior things started. But school was good. Year 9, year 10, year 11. I remember a lot of good times, and I had a good friends group around me, which, again, so fortunate to have that. So only good memories for high school itself. It was when I went to sixth form, and personally, the change between 7 to 11 GCSE to A levels, it was massive. It was huge. And everything about it changed. I remember those 2 years, I don't really look back on fondly at all in sixth form.
Do you think a little bit, though, like with a lot of young people as well, that you bumbled into A levels as it was like, I've done GCSE, and you just, in the same school, naturally fell into it because you didn't
100%
explore further opportunities, because you ended up, am I right? Did you end up going to Lancaster Morecambe College?
I
do
did
something with music.
Yeah. And in hindsight, I'd have just gone there straight away, but it's kind of ingrained into you that sixth form is just something you do. It's like part of the normal school process. So yeah, there wasn't even any doubt. It was straight in there, and all my mates.
And then there would have been
well,
limited.
So.
Exactly, and there would have been limited choices for someone like yourself who's got this keen interest in music as well, wouldn't there?
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you do A-level music?
I didn't. No.
Was it an option?
I remember that I didn't do A-level music, because to do A-level music, you had to have chosen in year 10 to take music. And I remember the music teacher at the time telling me the only way they'd allow me onto the music course is if I took up formal guitar lessons. And at the time, my family could not afford formal guitar lessons, so we couldn't get on the course.
Which kind of takes us back to go on.
No, and that's
just it.
Yeah, that's the root of so many problems. I could already play guitar to a standard, surely satisfactory enough to get onto a year 10 course in music, something I was genuinely interested in. And I remember the teacher just telling me and my family flat out, you must take guitar lessons, or else you can't come on this course. So I ended up taking a bunch of subjects that I just wasn't interested in and failed it miserably.
And it's interesting that, because if you've got an interest in education at all, a lot of the literature at that moment, a lot of the chatter is about supporting pupils with specific interests in a learning environment, and teachers becoming facilitators of this. It's really hard, but should young people like yourself who have got that talent, what we're saying really is just a formal qualification matter if you can do it. I mean, I didn't realise you started as young as year 8, to be honest. I had a different story in my head. I'd got this idea that somebody in sixth form had got a banjo and he had been playing a banjo. I could picture the lad in my head. You'd picked up the banjo and he'd sort of dropped it. You'd kind of carried on and then drifted into guitar. So that was obviously complete nonsense on my part. I don't know where that had come from.
There might be.
I thought there was a banjo involved.
It might be intertwined with truth somewhere. I do remember picking up the banjo and playing it, but I think I could already play it, and I think it might have been a 6-string banjo. I just transition the guitar chords to the banjo, and you probably saw it.
But I'm not going mad though. There was a banjo somewhere involved. I don't know whether.
I feel like there might have been a banjo. Maybe there wasn't a banjo. Who knows?
I mean, you talk about that school. I think that one thing about being in Lancaster that you were very lucky with is that Lancaster has got, and Morecambe as well, has got a very good kind of music scene for you and your style.
Yeah.
I remember when I was living there, you could pretty much on a Sunday wander into town, wander into any pub, and there'd be somebody playing a guitar.
Yeah.
Either a solo or in a small band. Folk was big, wasn't it? Jazz was big. I remember going into the John O'Gorman in town centre, and they had a thing called Jazz and a Sausage.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, Jazz and a Sausage. You go and watch a jazz band, and they'd randomly bring around plates of sausages at the interval. And it was, so you grew up in a place that had a lot going on for you. Yeah. Was that important, do you think?
Definitely, yeah. Lancaster is a small city. It's a city, but it's a small one. And what Lancaster does well, and I think it's still doing well, and it's still growing ever so slightly, but exponentially, is its music scene. Obviously, having the university so close by is great, and that helps a lot. But the town has a lot of town, city, whatever, has so many.
I know why you're saying that, because it isn't a big city.
No, that's the old thing, isn't it? It's got a cathedral there, so it makes it a city. But they've got so many music venues that actually allow musicians to play original music as well. And although that shouldn't sound mind blowing, it really is. You can't say the same for Morecambe as much. Morecambe is more of a cover acts, backing tracks place, which is fine. There's a space for that. There's a place for that. But Lancaster, I think Lancaster does champion original music a lot more than other places do. But that's not to say it's perfect, and it could do much more as well. And the venues could pay more, and punters could go out more. If the crowd were more interested, then it would work better. But then it's like the chicken and egg. What comes first, quality acts or crowd going to see the acts, which in turn means the venues can afford to bring acts. Venues now, like Cantina and the Town Hall, and I remember at Lancaster Library, I'm not sure if they do gigs anymore, but they brought great artists to Lancaster. There are all these little venues popping up, and then you've got the Ashton Memorial that do the festival every year, Highest Point. There are a lot of bigger bands coming to Lancaster now than 20 years ago, and that can only be a good thing for the local music scene. But I was very fortunate to get into the music scene in Lancaster in around 2009, 2010. They allowed me to play gigs as a baby, basically. I was 15 years old, and I was making friends with people who were twice my age, playing in bands that had been on the circuit for years, and they were saying, oh yeah, come do a half-an-hour slot before our gig at the Bobbin on Thursday night. And obviously, at that age, I was snapping that up. I was hungry. I wasn't getting paid, of course I wasn't, because I was doing 30 minutes, 3 of my own songs, 3 covers. That, honestly, I remember being so excited about those gigs. Come do 40 minutes at the Golden Lion before we go on and do an hour. And these guys were my gods. Like, these guys were 40-year-old men playing their own songs. They've been doing the circuit for 20 years, but I was a 15-year-old kid and I was making friends with these guys. It was an introduction that has served a purpose. It has really helped me like develop social skills from a young age, I believe, and I've carried them out.
And were you doing your own songs then as well?
Yeah.
Was that your own stuff you were doing as well?
Yeah, definitely. I always
because you've never been a covers guy, have you?
I've done covers gigs. I have done them because at one point I was making a full living from my touring. So it was kind of like two different lives as a musician. I'd do a lot of covers gigs locally and not really tell people about them. And in truth, not enjoy them at all because I was playing songs I wasn't particularly fond of anyway. And the covers that I would play, that I would enjoy playing, were by artists I loved and nobody knew them. So it was quite odd. But then I'd do my original gigs and they were the ones I'd scream about.
And actually then you've done, I mean, to think you're doing that from 15 years old, you've done really well, haven't you? To be doing your own stuff from so young and still be doing it and got
young
5
enough to not know
now?
any better.
But is that not the best way though, to some extent? You know, you kind of set up on this journey, didn't you? Like you put this in your lyrics sometimes, don't you? You know, in some of your songs, you kind of give a nod towards this, that you were sort of this young, slightly, not naive's the wrong word, but just sort of giving it a shot.
I think it's the right word.
But so was naivety part of your success, do you reckon then? You know, that you just didn't care, the power of youth.
What is success? Yeah, it was definitely,
well, that's a whole different podcast,
definitely a contributor to having the most fun, for sure. Naivety is wonderful, especially when you're this kid who, again, it was my getaway because the first couple of years of me playing gigs and then going on to booking my own tours, it was all done during a time when I was still receiving education. But obviously it didn't help me with the education side of things, but it was my escape. It was my weekend getaway to play 3 gigs at the weekend, Friday, Saturday and Sunday, and then go to sixth form during the week. I'm not focusing on sixth form during the week, am I? If I know I've got a few gigs and, I'm going to go and play a gig in Oldham this weekend, no one ever gets excited about going to Oldham, but I was getting excited about going to Oldham.
So, I mean, I was sort of thinking about, you know, like that, see Billy Elliot. There is a relevance to this. In that film, Billy Elliot, when he goes and auditions, doesn't he, and does that kind of weird football dance.
Yes.
And they look at him askance in his audition, and then he's about to leave, and then one of the judges or whatever they were, you know, the people auditioning turn around and stops him and says, like, you know, how do you feel when you're dancing? And it sounds like you're in that kind of moment, aren't you? Like, you know, this is something you've got to do.
100%, especially back then. And I was seeing people similar to what I do on a much grander scale, being successful and having people just genuinely enjoy and relate to what they do. And again, the naivety thing, I was thinking, oh my God, I want to do that. And I want people to relate to my words, my music, like these other people do to those artists, to see it. Like I saw it with my own eyes. I remember the time I thought, I don't have to play in bands. I don't have to find people who I can rely on and who will be on time for band practice. I can just use an acoustic guitar and do this myself. And it was when I went to see Green Day in 2010, and Frank Turner supported them, and he supported them with an acoustic guitar, playing to 50,000 people. And on another page, I was, wait, this is acoustic music, but it has oomph. There's nothing like soft about this. It's acoustic music with a message, and it's acoustic music that you can play in a pub and make people listen. This isn't background acoustic music. This is this is raw and real. And this is something I feel like anybody can do.
So what was when you set out like that then, what was your intention? You talk about like 50,000 people or whatever. Did you want to go out in crowds? Did you want to make money? Did you just want to do it? Was it just you having fun?
Again, we go back to naivety.
Hopefully all of those things?
I don't even know if I knew what I wanted at the time, but it was all I knew. And it was an escape. It was just a all-out escape. I put my emotions into these songs. They make me feel better. I remember going through a particularly anxious time during the second year of sixth form, and to the extent like this is a podcast where I've come in wanting to talk about my life and give something. So I'm going to be honest about everything. I went through a period during sixth form where I was vomiting every single morning before coming in. I hated it so much. And the only way I could stop myself from vomiting at 7:30 in the morning before leaving for school was by getting my guitar out and playing a Green Day cover or something, just to settle my nerves. And then as soon as I started doing that, I was fine and could go in. It was bizarre. So when people ask me why I enjoy it or why I began doing it, like, because I had no other choice. It seemed to be like the best remedy at the time.
And I think sometimes there's a nod to that, isn't there, in some of your lyrics?
Definitely, yeah.
Sometimes in your songs, you can hear that in some of your lyrics. That this is like, I mean, is it too big a word to say therapy or medication? That this is something you're doing to sort of, it's part of you, isn't it? To settle yourself, to be who you are, to make you part of the genuine Joe.
Definitely, and
that's quite that's quite sad, isn't it? Nobody should be vomiting before they go to sick.
Yeah, it was terrible. I remember explaining it to friends at the time, and they had no clue what I was talking about. They didn't understand it. Some of them thought like I was being dramatic. Some of them they could not get my head around me throwing up for no reason whatsoever. And that kind of said to me, oh, I guess I can't get my head around it as well. There's something severely wrong here. And there was.
And this
there was.
And this brings back a little memory. And I know we've spoken about this before, actually. That time on the stairs at sixth form when you were sat on the stairs looking a bit glum. It must have been your second year at sixth form. And I was coming down the stairs and you were talking to one of your friends about something. He was talking about you saying you wanted to leave sixth form.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to you about what you wanted to do and saying to you, yeah, you should do that while you're young.
Yeah.
And that seemed quite a sort of flippant thing to say at the time. But actually now, looking back, that was exactly what you should have done.
Yeah, 100%. And I remember it getting to a stage during that second year of sixth form, maybe around the April-May period. And I remember Mr. Seddon from sixth form. He was huge. He was brilliant with me. He was so... I can't remember what his official role was in the school.
He was in pastoral, wasn't he? It was a pastoral role of some description with sixth form,
and I remember I couldn't believe that somebody was just being so understanding of my situation. It made me feel like it was okay to be this ill and feel this way. And he helped me. And I remember he just said, go home, just take a couple of weeks off, see who you need to see, do what you need to do. And I'll always remember him for helping me so much. Even if he doesn't remember me now, like he will always be such a pivotal point of like understanding what was happening to me at the time. And it wasn't like it was there and done. I've had problems since. I've had worse problems since because these kind of problems they don't disappear. They kind of just simmer, and there are ways to suppress them. There are ways to just get through them. There are ways the body learns to get through them. There are ways to learn how to think through them. And that is how people like me get through these things. But yeah, Mr. Seddon at the time was brilliant. Hopefully I'll see him again one day and I don't know, shake his hand or...
I'll send him the podcast.
Yeah, you could do that as well.
And I really appreciate, Joe, your openness on that, because I think that it's really important to be recognised as people who work in education, who work in schools. It's not just our role to educate, give you knowledge, get you exams, move you on. There's got to be more to it, hasn't there?
Yeah.
I work in a SEND environment now, and that, like special educational needs, and that aspect of it's crucial.
Of course.
And that also needs to be across the whole of education, I think, doesn't it? But you recognise that in yourself, and I can hear that in your lyrics and the music sometimes, that you are using this. It's almost like you're sometimes offloading into your lyrics, aren't you? And you are
absolutely
capturing moments. It's almost like you're almost putting them down for all to. It's there for all to hear if you listen hard enough, isn't it? And music therefore has, like we said, maybe has been a form of therapy.
Definitely, especially.
I think
I keep reiterating as well. Certainly through those years, from 16 to 23 years old, music was my escape, and the touring, the playing shows, just doing my own thing, being my own person, being independent and doing what I wanted to do. That was everything for me. And at one point, I couldn't see myself doing anything else. And again, I look back on that and I'm like, that was a very tunnel vision way to see the world, because the pressure that I used to put on myself once I'd moved on into this music world, where I was quote unquote Joe McCorriston, and I was the guy who worked hard. I was the guy who was in Germany that day, then Switzerland the next day, then Austria the next day. That ended up backfiring on me personally, I think as well. But now I look back and I'm happy that happened, because I can take a breath, I can sit back, and I can see what went wrong, why it went wrong, and how I can now look at that and use it for my own future.
And you can learn from that, and you did it, is the point, isn't it? You know, like I think a lot of young people listening, I say young people listening, I don't know what demographic is, but, you know, people listening to this will be looking back on, you can look back on your own. I'm much older than you, reflecting back on these things. Everybody's had those experiences, haven't they? You know, where in their youth they've done something.
One fashion or another,
and
yeah.
It's been tough, or, you know, it might be music for you, but it might be something else for somebody else. And I think for people listening, it's really important, isn't it, to acknowledge that young people often need a thing that needs to be supported, because it is their lifeblood, isn't it? It's the thing that makes them who they are.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And you see this all the time on Instagram, you know, you see musicians, you see artists, you see cosplayers, you see sportsmen that without that thing in their life that they are, and let's take this back to the topic, intrinsically motivated to do. For some people, they need that, don't they, to define themselves. Music defines you, doesn't it?
Yeah. Music does, any kind of art does. Art is so important, and people don't realize how important art is. When the film industry closes down and everyone in the filming industry is out of work for a year and a half or whatever, people don't realize, oh, that's all of our entertainment gone. And I think people realize that during COVID a little bit. Oh, the writers are on strike.
Absolutely.
There are no new series.
Yeah.
The actors are on strike. Because I'm a creative person, and I know it's odd to say this about yourself, but I just have to be creating all of the time. And whether that's any 5 minutes of spare time, I'll be on my laptop typing away at stories. I'll be singing a little melody in my head that I had in my dream last night, and I'll be like, how can I put that into a song? Or how can I match that with another melody, and I'll make that the verse and that the chorus. And then I already know in my head the chords that will go behind those melodies. So then I've kind of like got a song there, and I'm going to record a 10-second clip of that on my phone, and then later I'll use that. So I've got like a guide to write the song, and then I'll write. So I'm just always creating. I've always got to keep my mind busy, and that is a way that I've definitely dealt with letting the brain wander, if we put it that way.
And I think, and we're kindred spirits in that respect. I hadn't really thought about this, so I realised it, but, you know, I have that similar need to be making, whether it's writing books, which I've done, whether it's got to be crafting something, I see something on YouTube, I've got to have a go at it, Instagram, I'll have a stab at that, but I've got to be making and creating. And maybe it's like, for some of us, it's that almost like primordial urge, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like painting on cave walls or whatever, sculpting with clay.
But it's not always healthy. It's definitely not always healthy. Like, everything is nuanced, obviously, but I struggle to rest. I struggle to not be doing anything that might either progress my career or progress the invisible skill tree that I have in my head. And I'm like, right, I'm on level 7 at that skill at the moment. What book do I read today to get to level 8? Because I have to do something like that today, because then I've wasted my time. It's just constant. Even when I'm watching a series with my fiance, I'll be thinking, oh, that cinematography is fantastic. Look at the way that shot pans and uses that space over there to create the atmosphere. Like, you're almost seeing things that aren't there. I'm just like, why can I not watch this as a punter? Why do I have to be wondering I might make something that interesting one day? Like, it's frustrating at a point, and it's hard to switch off. And it's probably the same reason I'm just lying there in bed at night and there are songs playing in my head, and I've got to put a fan on for noise, and I've got to put earbuds in, and it never ends. And because I'm a freelancer as well, you're always thinking about, what can I do? Where's my next job? How am I going to monetize that? How am I going to market it once I've worked out people might be interested? It never ends.
I mean, this is, Joe, it terrifies me actually. We're kind of kindred spirits again in this respect, because I sort of, I know, I'll have a go at a podcast, and it'll just be banging in my head until I start one. And then I'll be thinking, like, who's my next guest? What can I talk about? Let's make a ton of notes. So I'll be, but on the sidelines of that, and I bet you've got this as well then, haven't you? I've also got an art project I'm thinking about over here, or a book that I might write in 10 years time, and it's all bumbling about. I mean, here's a funny anecdote, because when I was just to lighten up a bit, but when I was at school, I took all the sciences. I should not have done this, because I was really into art and design and all those kind of things. Took all the sciences because I wanted to be a vet. Very
Right.
quick anecdote. But it turned out, years later, I realised I didn't want to be a vet. I just enjoyed the James Herriot books. I wanted to be a writer.
I love that.
But because I was so young, when that sort of like seed got embedded and my mind was pick up on it and lock it in, I went down this whole route. I was not a scientist. I was useless at chemistry. But nobody pulled me back. I probably shouldn't, in all honesty, Joe. I've ever taught psychology because it's a science. I should have been, when I was younger, I should have done art or something. So let's not turn this into a therapy session for me.
Clearly you were skilled enough in the subject to make it to the point where you were teaching at A level. So I'm sure there was some talent there.
I think the talent in teaching sometimes, though, is in making the subject creative. And I feel like what I'm quite good at now I'm teaching special needs. Sorry, I'm making this about me, not about you. I'll probably edit this bit out. Is that the more creative you are, the better a teacher you are when it comes to that sort of level of teaching, because you can intersperse a bit of art with poetry, with music, and then a bit of science. So it's that creative skill to see the big picture. Sorry, made that about me for a second.
No, don't be silly. This is a chat. This is a chat. Both of us.
Let's talk about your levels of literacy, because I was thinking, I think I probably know the answer to this, but back at school, you would have studied English, you would have studied books and writing and all those sort of things. But actually, your levels of literacy, when you listen to your lyrics, are really high. The way your brain plays with words is quite phenomenal. Take that compliment, because I've listened to I've had a lot of your songs on loops in the car recently, and sort of like listened to that and like, this stuff's really, really good. Almost like, I don't say that that sounded surprised. I didn't mean it.
No,
I
understand exactly what you mean.
Do you know what I mean? There's like poetry in there, and I can see that in everybody from, I'm going to throw a couple of weird names out, like everybody from Eminem to Billy Joel.
Yeah.
Do that, don't they?
Huge Billy Joel fan, by the way.
The play with words, great stuff. The play with words in musicians like that. And I sort of think you're kind of on that level.
Oh, don't be
If you really unpick your lyrics. No, seriously, if you unpick your lyrics. I thought about this in a reverse way, because as I was thinking about this, I thought there was a time many years ago, and I'd heard an anecdote about, and again, a very different name, Kylie Minogue, had gone to an open mic night in Australia and read out I Should Be So Lucky as a poem. And I was thinking, like, that would work with a lot of your songs, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I guess so.
He stood up and read them as a poem, the lyrics themselves. So what's that process?
Well,
where do lyrics come from?
I think it's very kind what you're saying. Yeah, at the same time, if I were to go back and rewrite some songs, I would definitely look at it with like an editor's perspective, and I'd probably, what words can I cut out there? What words can I change there? I would definitely rewrite some lyrics, because I listened to some in the past and I'm like, just so crap. Obviously, everyone has bad songs. Like on the album I've got coming out next year, there were some of my favourite lyrics on that. And for the first time, I feel like a writer, because I actually have I've actively tried to become a better writer in both literacy and songwriting over the past 6 years, to the point where I'm reading 5 or 6 books a year, or how to write a novel, how to edit a novel, how to write short stories, how to write a screenplay, etc. But obviously that's kind of a linear training. So maybe that kind of training gets rid of some of that naivety, that natural rawness that comes through when you're younger. I know a lot of people enjoy kind of how, I'm going to use fake words again, like bedroomy the songs are. You write them in your bedroom and you never expect them to leave your bedroom. And there's a beauty in that. There's an authenticity in that, because you're just a kid saying what comes to your mind, and you aren't trying to doctor it. You aren't trying to simmer it down or bulk it up. You're just putting it out, and there's no one there editing it for you. Which in certain cases, probably a problem. But in other cases, some of the songs that just fell better, I've been lucky.
Isn't that part of the process, though, in terms of creating like more genuine songs? That's coming from you. You've not got an editor coming in and going,
no.
You should change that word.
Yeah, no.
Probably work better if you said that.
I'd have to give them a co-writing credit, and then
and all of that. Yeah, my mind wants to ask me which ones you think were rubbish, because I can't. What was the first? If you, I'm not going to ask that question at all. If you were thinking back, what was the first, not you sort of your early songs really thinking about, the first one you thought, yeah, that could go on an album? On that first album you released, what was the first one you thought, yeah, that's going on there?
It was probably a song called Save Me, but that's because it was just a straight up pop song with simple lyrics and a catchy chorus. And I was finding my feet at the time. I didn't know what kind of songwriter I was going to become. I didn't know which of the bands I was listening to were going to become bigger influences, which were going to fade out. And I thought, this is a good pop song. There really isn't much deeper to it than that. It was kind of like, all right, first 15 songs, they're here. 15, too long for an album. Let's put 10 to 12 on it. I'm going to pick my 10 favourites. It wasn't a case of that is good enough for an album, that's good enough for an album. I just threw my first batch of songs together and released them as an album.
I mean, they are eclectic, aren't they, your songs?
Yeah.
Like if you listen to one of your albums, if you are listening to a particular song, the song that comes after it is not always what you're expecting. You really do. There's a lot of change in sort of like style, tempo, mood. I was jotting down there's everything in there from almost like a bit of ska, a bit of reggae, a bit of folk, a bit of punk.
Yeah.
There's even one. I mean, I was writing down about Stay Silent, which when I was listening to that last night, I was thinking, this sounds like Tim Minchin in Jesus Christ Superstar.
I love that. I love Tim Minchin.
And because you've got that sort of like, and again, I don't know whether Andrew Webber's a great comparison, but that sort of rock opera bit suddenly comes in, and the electric guitar, and you go like, that is a great tune.
Thanks. It's a very old one.
I'll link that into the bio. Let people. Is that an old one?
Oh yeah, that was one of the first. That was on the first album. 14 years old, that one. Yeah.
And then you've got like some more punky ones like Alive.
Yeah.
You've got I jotted one down and said like it has sort of a folk reggae. I'll tell you what it was. It was Haven't Got All Day.
Yes. That was the
breaks into this sort of twangy reggae.
Yeah, a little Caribbean.
And so you
have
a little Caribbean bit number going in there, but you haven't got like I say you don't like to sort of like box yourself off, do you? Or pigeonhole yourself into a certain. And I imagine it's coming into your head. And you're having to write it down.
Yeah, I'm into too many genres to just be one thing, and especially when I wrote those songs, I didn't know who I was either. Like I was still finding out what was my lane, and see what during those early recordings as well. I hadn't found my voice either. I hadn't found my singing voice because I was like even singing in like an American twang, and like I cringe at it now, but people don't really mention it much when they talk about those songs. So I'm like, oh, is it not as pertinent as I thought it was? But there were no boxes back then. It was like acoustic pop, reggae, a bit heavier with Stay Silent, like you say, and then full on country in a couple of songs as well. And then some of them are just straight up acoustic, one take, like folk songs. Yeah, it was fun. It was fun finding my feet. I remember those early years musically very fondly because they were the years that my music distracted from real life and it brought me out of a tough time. So I'll always have a special place for those songs and that album in particular because it was a new and exciting world that I'd never delved into. And it was basically, here's the rest of your life. Go and have at it.
Quite like as well the way you, in your lyrics, you create these little photographic moments of your life. I sort of made a little note on the side, like Joe's basically writing his autobiography in song sometimes because it's like some of the quite broader themes sometimes in there, but sometimes it's these real like proper snippets. Like, and again, it's an old one like Castle Hill. And you're talking about going up to the castle. If you're from Lancaster, you know that hill, don't you, with the castle on the top and going up there and then gigging at the Yorkie house and wandering back. And there's this lovely bit where you talk about like you just bump into some girl that you once knew. And your brain says, I'll tell you what, I'll turn that into a lyric. And there's just this whole sort of like little tiny moments of Joe's life that come out in your songs. I think that's quite appealing. It's quite an interesting way to sort of like look at your tunes. And if you don't, then you'll write about your now you've described your brain. I can see this now. Like you go, oh yeah, I'll write a song about that. Theo, you write a song about your nephew when he was born.
Yeah.
You like you just sort of like
he's in the other room
everything. So rather than sort of creating photo albums, you seem to create like this photo album, but in words.
Yeah.
Of all these different moments and things in your life, and that's a pretty cool thing to have done, I think.
Thanks. It's
yeah.
I can't say it was my choice. It just happened.
So I mean, last thing on that, like. Because I knew I was going to ask this question. What is a pop song for a punk kid?
Pop song for a punk kid. It's so again, like you've already highlighted, that a lot of my music kind of strays across loads of different genres. And I think I describe myself that way, firstly, because when people ask me what I do, what kind of music I make, obviously in the modern day, everyone thinks acoustic guitar, you are Ed Sheeran or you are Lewis Capaldi.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely not the case with what I do. Fair play to them. Like, there's a space for them and they're great at what they do, but it's not what I do. And pop songs for punk kids. I love pop music. I always have loved pop music. And I think the songs I write are mostly inspired by pop music, but I genuinely grew up in the punk scene, going to punk gigs in Manchester. That's where I found my people for that time. And I got into a lot of punk bands. Honestly, the punk ethos, you go through stages. 4 or 5 years, I was punk is everything. And although I think I still carry a lot of that ethos now, I can also see the flaws in what was happening at the time. But when it comes to music, I still very much have that punk energy inside of me. And I think when I perform, I feel like I'm just a punk rocker when I perform. I feel like I've just got so much energy and I need to put on a good performance. And to be honest, I think that's what punk is, just giving your all. And whatever you're doing, you've got to give it your best. And you've got, like, if I'm doing a show, and I don't do as many of them these days, which means that when I do, I have to put on the best possible show that I can. And I think a lot of punk comes from that. So going back to your original question, I write pop songs for people who grew up with that kind of punk rock scene energy. They want to see people that have done like the same kind of journey as they have. And I reckon that's where I come in.
And I think sometimes people might go, punk, it's the 70s. It's guys with pink spiky Mohicans and lots of piercings and leather jackets and spikes and all that. But actually what you're saying, it's not really necessarily about that, is it?
No, absolutely not.
It's a mindset. It's a mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's never been as true as it has in the last quarter century. Yeah, it was punk was definitely a different, if you were to look at the definition of it, it was certainly different in 70s, 80s. Like, it used to be an insult, didn't it? Like,
yeah,
punk.
Yeah.
It's weird.
But do you sort of so when you go to perform, then do you sort of step into your punk skin? You think when you walk upon at the stage, you kind of go, right, I'm just going to transform a little bit here. I'm in my performing zone.
Yeah, probably. I think so. I don't overthink it, and
no,
it's weird because I don't know if it has me or I'm trying to have it, but it's just the people who have, like, if I do a tour in Germany, all of the venues I play, they're either like squats or dingy clubs, and my audience, they're always punks. So the part of my head is obviously thinking there must be something punky to what I do, or is that because I've supported this punk artist in the past and taken some of their fans, and that's why the bits punks come in to see me, because they're taken from another artist. But why was I supporting that punk act in the first place? Oh, they must have thought what I do is suitable for supporting a punk band. I remember I supported a death metal band in Prague in 2017, and it was this squat venue in the middle of a park in Prague 11 or something. Have you been to Prague? No. So the city is split up into numbers. It's like Prague 1, Prague 2. It's cool. And this venue was in the middle of nowhere. I remember I walked there to save money on getting a cab, and it was about an hour and a half walk from the dorm I was staying in that night. And I just thought, what am I doing? Like, I'm going into the middle of nowhere. Turned up, acoustic act supporting this heavy metal band. But when I say heavy metal, they were more like, they were death metal. And I love that kind of music as well. I'm into everything. But I don't think they were ready for a skinny acoustic guy from Morecambe, northwest UK, to rock up with his acoustic guitar. But you know what? They enjoyed it. They had a great time. And then the headline band that they were all there to see came on after, and they went mental. And at the end of the night, I thought that worked. I don't know how, but it worked.
But maybe there's something quite punk about a guy with an acoustic guitar daring to rock up to support a death metal band.
Yeah.
Maybe they're going, oh, this guy's got some balls. He can, he's...
daring.
I mean, there's something, if you go back...
Slash stupid.
Yeah. There's something quite punk about the way possibly that you went about your touring then. Because I imagine that it was like you've just described, I walked there to save a cab fare. Almost, I envisaged you when you did that, and I forget whether it wasn't an album cover, it's a poster, wasn't it? It's a young, fresh-faced Joe sat on a suitcase in the snow at a train station, heading off on tour. I don't know at that point. That kind of maybe almost like summarizes like what you were doing at that point. It's all in the suitcase. I'm going to go and do it.
Yeah, that was. I've used that photo quite a lot actually, because it was my mate Jack was on tour with me at the time. I took him out to Germany with me because he was in his final year at university doing photography, and he wanted to photograph me on tour as part of his dissertation. In fact, it might have been his whole project. So it was an opportunity to get best mates together, go on tour. He was experiencing something he'd never experienced before. I had a tour buddy for the first time in my life, and that's where that photo came about. But yes, it's very real. There's nothing staged about it. I think we were in Bremen that night. And we were on our way to Leipzig or one of those cities. But yeah, I like that photo. It's very snowy. Yeah, good times.
So look, a few more questions. Writing is quoted as being literally the hardest form of thinking. Quite sure what that necessarily means sometimes.
I was going to ask you that.
Producing,
because I'm obsessed with writing, and I want to know more about it, and I want to learn what writing means to other people as well. Because writing for me, in whatever fashion, is just it keeps me going. It really does.
It is an interesting thing, isn't it? And like you alluded to earlier on, you've got to be quite careful with writing, not to maybe overlearn how to do it. I did, when you're talking about screenplays and books and things, when I was writing my books, you get all these books on how to write a novel, how to write a screenplay, how to write a short story. But actually, on the whole, I don't think I took that much from them to some extent. So I would just sit down and write. And sometimes I'd have like a scene in my head in the middle of a book, just start in that chapter and write to the end, but then kind of have to go, oh, I don't know how this started, so you then got to go back the other way.
Yeah.
It wasn't necessarily like a linear process for me. Did you have any? What's the hardest song you've ever written? Is the one that's just come out and you've just gone, oh, that one wrote. Every singer-songwriter has one that said, I wrote that in 5 minutes. Just came.
Yeah. So when I was thinking about this, actually quite a lot of the songs wrote themselves, to the point where I can't remember writing most of them, because they were as simple as sitting down and bashing something out, and you're like, there you go, that song was written itself. It's an odd one for me, to be honest, because songwriting processes are so different for everybody. And when I chat to my friends who write songs about this, it's so odd. Sometimes they'll come up with a guitar riff or something, and then they'll sit there and with a pen and paper, how do I write lyrics to this? Where a lot of the time with me, writing a song is an idea forming in my head and a catchy line around that idea. And next thing, I've got a few lines and I know what chords are going to be played behind those lines to accentuate the melody as best as I can. And then I've just kind of got a song. The melody, it always comes. I'm probably stealing them from bands that I grew up listening to.
Well, I know that because I jotted this down. In terms of writing novels and things, like I was told once at a conference I've been to that there are only 7 stories to be told.
Oh, I've read that as well.
And that you're not stealing other people's ideas. You're just slotting your own ideas into those molds, maybe. But I don't think that's. I mean, for you with your songwriting, you're almost saying like the words and the music all come at once. The chords all come together. And I'd imagine sometimes that some people, when I've read of musicians, have come up with a great riff or they've come up with a great melody and had to wait ages to fit words to it. Or the opposite, they've written great lyrics but can't find the tune. And maybe that's why there's more collaboration out there for some people working together. But if you can do that and sort of just pull that off in your own head, almost like the whole package, like you've got a mixing board up there and it's all going on. That's an incredibly lucky skill to have, isn't it?
I guess so. Very lucky, yeah. I don't know.
So what's the one?
I guess it's not objective, is it? Music is subjective. I still don't know whether I'm any good at it. I'm not really bothered if I'm any good at it, because it's, again, I do this for me.
Which takes me right back to the title of this, doesn't it? Like looking at the idea of it being intrinsic motivation. If you're talking about what motivates you, which is what I was going to talk about later on, what is it motivates you? If no one ever saw you or heard you perform, do you think you'd still be doing it?
Yeah, 100%. In whatever it is that I do, It's definitely my own form of therapy. For example, I kind of have that now, what you're talking about, if no one ever saw it or knew it was happening. So when I mentioned that for the last 6 or 7 years I've tried to better my skills in other areas, I've got like 5 novels that are ready to be edited, 5 complete novels. I've got a collection of short stories that might see the light of day. Maybe I'll release them in some fashion next year or something, but these novels, I'm so proud of them, and I love them, and I love the universes that I've built and the characters and the relationships I've personally made with them. No one's ever read any of them, not even my partner. Like, they don't have a clue. This is all up here and on the page, and no one has ever seen them, and I don't know if anyone will ever see them, and I'm fine with that. Absolutely fine with that. So I guess that's kind of like living proof that, yeah, maybe I do actually do it for myself and not for other people. Like, it is kind of the same thing to me.
And to sort of twist that back to the sort of theme of the podcast a little bit, maybe that's what more people should be doing. You know, that's a healthy thing. That's a healthy skill to teach young people, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I've been reading, I picked up in a charity shop, Middleton guy, SES, you're tough enough.
Yes.
Just for a quid, picked up one of his books, The Fear Bubble. And in that, he talks about the difference between ego and pride. And I think that's quite interesting, that some people do things because they have to get something out of it. They've got to get money or an audience or affirmation or likes.
People got to pay rent.
Whereas, yes, and that is true, but it's okay to do things as well. At the end of the day, yeah, that comes from it. That's brilliant. But what you're doing it for really is your own sense of self, your own pride in what you've achieved. And you are kind of right. I put my books out on Amazon years ago, over 10 years ago, and I've sort of forgotten they're out there. And it's almost like a storing platform, because I've never got into that sort of promote social media and try and get money out of this.
Yeah.
I was just quite happy to have written them.
Yeah.
And they're sort of sitting there. And every Christmas I think, I ought to at least do something with these.
Yeah, let me guess, you forget. You forget to shout about.
But I've moved on to the next. But I've moved on to the next thing to try and get that sense of doing something new and doing something that I'm going to get another sense of pride out of.
There's always an itch to scratch.
Always. I think it is. They're exactly right. And it's that creative people have an urge to scratch the itch, don't they? If you're not creating, you're not happy.
Yeah.
And I think that goes back in education to the idea of the arts as well. Like, I mean, certainly when I was at school, music and art, drama, seen as soft options to some extent.
Oh,
as a subject.
Yeah. Oh, they were seen as lesser. But you don't want to be doing that. Like, why would you want to do that? You can't make a living from doing that. Why? Why can't I?
But then you alluded to it earlier on. Take all that away, because the government were very keen on this many years ago, weren't they? So, like, these aren't important subjects. You take all that away. Who's releasing music to listen to when you come back from work? Who's giving you theatre opportunities? Who's going to buy? Who's doing the art for you?
What are you watching on Netflix?
All of those things.
Even for the most basic form of art, what Netflix subscriptions go down. Netflix are out of business. Yeah. It's bonkers. It's bonkers.
And I remember having a friend who played many years ago in a wedding band, effectively. I used to go around weddings, and people were always complaining about how much they charged. And his argument was, but this isn't something that just happens. We've spent decades getting this good.
Yeah.
You're paying this because you deserve. You wouldn't complain about paying an accountant.
No.
You wouldn't complain
paying for the drinks behind the bar on the night.
Or paying for the drinks behind the bar, but you're complaining about paying for the musicians who have dedicated their lives to this.
It's such a stigma, isn't it? That I don't honestly. Where did it come from? Where did this idea come from that not just musicians, but creative people should not get paid? Is it like an expectation? Oh, you should have enjoyed making that. Oh, that's not real work. That's fun. But I can tell you firsthand, it ain't all fun, and that's why I don't tour as much as I did anymore. That's why it's no longer my living, because putting that kind of pressure on sustaining doing something that was once fun for a living, it makes it not fun anymore. And I'm so glad I realised that in the end.
Maybe, throughout history, musicians have suffered this, haven't they? You look at the medieval travelling minstrels who used to have to go from town to town scraping a living, or the touring theatre groups who make no money. Almost like it's not a deserved thing that they can earn that much money, because it's not a job. In inverted commas, it's
a job.
Because, like you're saying, you should do this for fun.
Yeah,
you should rock up and do this for fun. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting argument, isn't it? But like you allude to the slog there, effectively, don't you? How hard it's been. Do you think that's part of the joy, though? The fact that it's hard work to get to the point you've got to, or if sort of like in a Johnny Mnemonic or Matrix, two Keanu Reeves references, kind of like, if
I'm
I could
always here
download
for a Keanu Reeves reference, don't you worry.
if I could sort of download the ability to be great at an instrument and be able to sing into someone's head. I often thought about this when I was learning the trumpet, and I took the trumpet up very late. I think I got it for my 30th birthday. I thought, if I could just get like really good at this so that I could just stand up in a bar and play some chats with these bands without any effort, would I enjoy it as much?
Yeah.
Would I get the buzz? Do you have to have gone through the slog? And maybe is that why there aren't as many people like yourself who have done this and released albums independently and got to that and done their own tours? Because it's not easy.
Yeah, maybe. I think you say it's not easy, but the world has kind of made it easier for people not to tour, but definitely easier to release music, make albums and release music, because people do it in their bedrooms now, and it's quite simple to get it onto the streaming platforms. But then comes the whole marketing side of things. That's where people can't find an audience for what they're releasing, and so many people are doing it, so much more than ever. It makes those audiences even harder to find. So there's always something stopping you from just shooting straight through.
Were you, when you first came into that, where was social media for you? Was it a big thing? I think in terms of time
was
frames.
big. It was definitely important. I think I was lucky that it hadn't completely taken over the world yet. So like MySpace was just coming to its end. Facebook was very valuable for a musician because you didn't have to give them money for people to see your posts. If they signed up for your page, they were seeing every single thing you posted, whereas that is not the case at all anymore. If I post anything on any of my social media platforms, trying to sell something or promote a new single, etc., it will want money from me just so that it appears on people's feeds who have already signed up to hear my stuff. It's bonkers, especially if I use a keyword like song or new or Patreon or just stuff like that. So you've got to work ways around it, which forces me to be creative again and be a bit silly, which I always enjoy being a bit silly as well. So
I do notice sometimes you're sort of trying to get around.
Yeah.
Especially if you're trying to post a new song on Patreon, which is an absolute nightmare. And I mean, what social media has taught us is that the market can be saturated. It kind of is saturated, isn't it? The other side of that is there's a phenomenal amount of talent out there.
Yeah.
That is making itself visible on social media.
Yeah.
And is that a good or a bad thing? It's good for them, but it makes it incredibly hard, doesn't it? It's like when I started to try and release books, it was the time that the market was becoming more and more saturated.
Yeah.
And anyone could publish, and it was self-publishing
the talent
actually made it so much more difficult.
Talent is a great thing, of course, but with social media, it has brought comparison, and comparison is evil because there's always someone out there you'll think is doing a million times better than you are, always someone doing worse, and you just can't help yourself but compare. And this is why I don't really use social media to look at other people. Like, I won't follow like real life friends, or I will, but I won't look at their feeds. I really try to use social media as a platform just to promote my stuff, which sounds incredibly vain, but that is the way I use social media. And I'll often get a friend saying, "Oh, you don't like check out my profile." I'm like, I don't check out anyone's profile on social media. That's not why I'm on there. I'm on there for selfish purposes. I'm on there to try and give my music a platform, or just tell people what I'm doing, because I'm aware that there are an audience who care about that. And if you want to be a part of that by following the page, great. If not, also great. But so social media is great and awful. It's this thing you just need to know how to use and not use it if you're not capable of knowing how to use it without it affecting you, because it's such a cesspit, honestly.
Yeah. Just coming back though, really, to last question, really, because it is a pod about education and learning. And hopefully we've got a real sense of what you can achieve if you've got that intrinsic motivation. Because let's be honest, you have achieved a lot. 5 albums, 6 coming out.
I guess so. I reckon I've got a long way to go. I reckon.
Well,
we might
looked
be
at your
talking next
streams.
year, and in my head, I'm thinking we'll talk next year. I've had a great year in TV because I'm working in telly at the moment, like do background stuff, and I'm making little connections in there, and
Go on then. Now, can we talk about that? Because I felt it was a bit of a secret project. Phones taken off you and all that.
No, not a secret project at all. I work on secret projects, but only secret to the extent where we have to sign NDAs, because if we talk about the actual productions we're on, then it gets out and we'll be in trouble. I'll never get work again. No, I just living in London. There's a lot of work about, and if you get in with the right people and basically prove to them that you know how to follow simple instructions on a movie set, and you're punctual and okay to work with, basically you're not an idiot on set, then you can get a lot of work. And I've been lucky enough to, over the past 5 years since I've lived there, it's kind of become my regular income is just working on TV sets. And I feel like background extras, because that is most of what I do. They're just like important but unseen cogs in the background. And you know what's great about this job for me? It's stable. I'm in the same place, and that is what I needed. Like I live in a single location now, and that is completely different to my life as a touring musician. I used to be somewhere different every day, and then I'd come back to Morecambe for 1 week, and then I'd be out on my next tour. That it got so draining. It became such a hustle that I needed to be with people. I was sick of being alone. I'd never see my partner. I was sick of my guitar, sick of walking everywhere, sick of having a 2-hour show to play, whilst next day I'm booking my next tour on the laptop on the train. A billion different languages. I'm talking German while I'm in France. I was like, you know what? I just need to settle down a bit. And I think it came at the right time. I was lucky enough to be able to move to London, stay with my partner's parents for a while, just as I kind of found my feet. And yeah, so I landed in telly. And what is great about doing TV is there's a lot of downtime, and I can crack out my laptop and I can write. And so often I'll spend 2 hours in the holding area on set, like editing or writing, and people will ask me what I'm doing, because they either are interested in what you're doing or they're just pretending to be interested in what you're doing. And people will think I'm rude because I'll say, oh, don't worry about it. It's not interesting. Really, I'm not, I don't want to start talking about it. I just want to crack on with it. I just want to get on with my project. Thank you very much. And then you're called to set, and then you're in set mode. Right, I'm going to do what the director tells me to do. I'm going to be professional. And then, right, back to holding area, everyone. Get back to the laptop, crack on again. And then have a chat with friends, but then crack on with my work again. It's such a... there's something really nice about having something that feels stable, even though people would look at me like I'm crazy if I told them that working in television was stable, because it is rocky as hell. A lot of the time you're getting a week of work a day before the week starts. You don't know if you're working that week or not until you get a call the night before. But it just feels so much more stable than touring around with my music did. And now I'm not relying on it for a living. I feel like there's that creativity, that buzz that has been revitalized. And that's where this album next year, I could have rushed and got that out 6 months ago, but I didn't need to, because I'm not relying on it to bring in money. I'm not in any rush whatsoever. And I know next year when this new album comes out, I'm going to be happy with every single note, because we are taking so long and we are so meticulous with every detail. And I'm in the right space for that kind of thing at the moment.
I mean, that sounds like you're living the dream in respect, doesn't it? Like you're were never going to work in an office, were you? You're never going to have a boss.
No.
So actually, you have created a life for yourself around creativity. And again, goes back to that intrinsic motivation. You're doing it because you want to do it.
Yeah.
And you're very lucky to have found
I'm
bubble
incredibly
to exist,
lucky.
haven't you? You know, it's
Yeah. And people, by the way, people always ask me how the acting is going. And I'm always very quick to say, wait a minute, I'm not an actor and I don't want to be an actor, because I have friends who are actors and I do not want to belittle what they do. They have trained. They are good. I'm not an actor. I'm a supporting character in the background that is basically colouring in the background whilst the actors do their job. Don't want to be stepping on those toes. It's often old friends and grandparents who say it's acting. And I'm very quick to say it's not that. But what is great about doing this background work, which is this world that I find myself in London, is I get to watch people who... I get to work with directors who have directed some of my favourite films, my favourite television series. I get to see the on-set writers at work changing the script at the time. I get to see how everything works, and I'm there on my laptop doing my own thing. I feel like I'm just watching it, living it, learning as we go. And that's why I say I don't know about how much I've achieved, but there's definitely I've definitely been given a platform to maybe achieve a bit more, I think, if I keep at it.
Can we ask what you've been in? What can we see you in? Where can we spot you in the background?
Yeah, I guess the things that...
I'm just that's a personal curiosity now.
Well, almost every blooming commercial you see on telly, I've probably worked on it. Because they're all filmed in London. Again, it's just a thing. I'm there in London and I'm on time. Honestly, all you need to work in this industry is punctuality. You know when to say please and thank you, and you know how to follow instructions and stay focused. So yeah, there's a Amazon series called My Lady Jane that I was lucky enough to do like 4 weeks on. It's very rare you get a job in this industry that is quite consistent like that. So that was a 4-weeker. Is House of the Dragon season 2 is out now, isn't it?
I don't know.
I think that has been released, so I can now. I did a lot of work on that. That's the Game of Thrones one. Yeah, I did some work on that. There are a couple of series and movies that I've worked on this year. And it's the first time I've ever worked on something that I was a genuine fan of before working on them. So that's quite fun for me. I can't say what they are now because they're not out yet, but next year they will be out and I'll be able to go, hey, I worked on that.
If someone wants to do what you've done, they want to follow their own path, whether that be music, art, guess even like sports, science, whatever. If they want to go down their own, do you have a piece of advice? Because you've took that plunge, didn't you?
I took the plunge, but I'm not going to pretend that I didn't have a supportive network around me. So it's easy enough for me to go, oh, just go for it. You've got to do what you want to do. But I'm lucky to have parents who are creative. Like my dad's a musician. He plays the trumpet and he's been in bands growing up. And I've got a good relationship with my parents. And when I was 15 years old, going through everything I was going through at school in sixth form, I think they knew that I was always just going to do what I wanted to do. So instead of trying to fight that, they were supportive and they would help me like try to achieve that. Like it's an odd one because, and again, like this advice question, what is advice really?
Yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah. Yeah,
it's because
I like the fact that
it's a question that musicians are often asked, and I feel like it's so nuanced. As you have to have context. Like to give a proper answer, I'd be like, okay, but what position is the person I'm giving advice in? Like, do they have a supportive network? Do they have money? Don't they have money? Like, what kind of minority are they from? Because it might not be accepted in their culture to do this. They might be forced by parents to take this subject. Because I know people that have had all of those things and one way or another, they've not been able to do it, or they've been able to do what they want to do because of those like factors. So, but
and I think you're right. We do hear, you hear stories about people sleeping in the back of their car, don't you? Eating baked beans for a year on a stove and broken guitar with 3 strings and still succeeding. But you are right when you talk about that support network. That's probably more important than anything, isn't it? Having parents or somebody that's got your back on this. And I think again, going back to kind of this podcast loosely being about education, that maybe that's the role of the teachers as well to recognise these things and go, we should be supporting you on this. We should be encouraging
as well.
You.
We're very supportive, and like because obviously during sixth form, I was already doing the music thing, but it wasn't a case of the teachers are like, oh, he shouldn't be doing that. They thought it was pretty cool. And they were like, oh, this guy is doing something that, hasn't really happened at this school during my time anyway. I'm not saying I'm the first musician to come out of the school and like do my own thing, but during our time, there wasn't really anyone else doing it properly like I was trying to. And rather than pushing me away, trying to get me off that, and turn me back onto academic subjects, they were quite supportive. Teachers would show interest. Oh, you've got a gig this weekend, have you? It all sounds very patronising now, but I was a 15-year-old, 16-year-old. And like, I know people who have gone to schools, some of them who've gone to private schools, and they've been told, oh, you shouldn't be doing that creative thing. No, you need to focus on this. And then years later, when they've been successful in that creative thing, they've invited people back to the school to give talks. It's like, it's contradictory. So I think I was lucky with school as well, definitely. Like, it was a good one in the sense that the teachers were not the problem, if there was a problem. When there were problems, it definitely was not the teachers. Apart from you.
Kicking you out for 2 weeks. Say though, yes. I mean, yeah. Let's just wind up then. What have you got out? What are you promoting? You've got your new album out in the new year.
Yeah, so we're very, very close to finishing tracking that album now. The album is being recorded with an old friend of mine called Dave Giles at his home studio in Oxford. Well, it's not his home, but it's a studio he has built himself, and it's great. It's like a little getaway from London, though. Recording this album has been like a holiday for me. And obviously we're ramping up to Christmas now, so I'm not there at the moment. I'm going to head back to the studio in the new year. We already have 2 songs from the new album out into the ether, as you mentioned at the start. One of them is called Liquid Remedy. That was very much a safer, like, typical me song is how I'd describe it, because it was my first new music for quite a while. And then the second single we released a couple of months ago called Signs, I like it. It's louder, some quite direct lyrics. It's fun. We did a lot with the sound that, listen, recording an album is weird. And in the past, I feel like I've never had a producer that is so ready to tell me something is crap. And I love that so much. In the past, I've kind of just gone, yeah, this is what we're doing. And no one has ever said, you know what, maybe we should change that lyric, or why don't you scrap that verse entirely? And I love it so much because, and it's almost like a collaboration thing, but then Dave, he's just like, I'm a producer. This is what I'm supposed to do. I'm not doing anything mind-blowing here. So with this new album, I'm very excited. First to finish it, but I've no doubt that it's gonna come out sounding exactly how I want it to sound. And I know people are going to enjoy it because it's good, and it's a good batch of songs.
Well, I've listened to them both. I'm not going to give too much away, but we'll put links in the bio to both of those singles on your Spotify. We'll stick all your links on there as well for your Facebook and whatnot. And it is Christmas Eve. You've got a couple of Christmas tunes floating about out there, haven't you?
I do, yeah. One of them is now a decade old, actually.
Yeah, I saw, yeah. That's the Plastic Christmas.
Yes, that's the sad one.
Yeah.
And I'll whisper it. I think
it is a sad Christmas song.
That's the better song. That's the song with more heart. Whereas the one last year, I wrote that when I was in the gym. I think it was 2nd of December, and I was in the gym. I'm just like, you know what? I'm an idiot. Why haven't I done a Christmas song this year? I could have, like, I'm getting back into the whole being a recording artist thing. People know I've got music coming out soon. They know I'm doing it all again. Why haven't I done a Christmas song? Like, I've missed a trick there. So I thought, you know what if I just write one in my head now quickly? And tracking back to earlier when you were talking about songs writing themselves, that one, let's not pretend that song is a lyrical masterpiece. It's exactly what I wanted to write. I was just like, you know what? I want to write a Christmas song that sounds like a Christmas song, that feels like a Christmas song. You hear it and you know it's Christmas. And that's what we did with Authentic Christmas. And there is irony in that name. So I wrote that during a set of squats or something, and then I texted Dave because Dave recorded it, and this was when he was just sorting out his studio properly. I was like, if I wrote a Christmas song, zip down to yours on the train, would you be able to record it in a day? And I was there the next day, and we did it all in a day, and we got it out a few days later. And you know what? I love it. It's great. It's a lot of fun.
I reckon you'll see a bit of a peak in the streams on that, people listening to this, because they'll be like, he wrote that while he was squatting in the gym, and then he rushed down there on a train. I need to hear this. I need to see what this is like. Joe, we'll stick everything in the bio. I've just seen a note, actually, one little last note on the side here that I wrote last night, because I just had this thing like, I reckon if he was shipwrecked on an island with only his guitar, I'd be busting into the coconuts.
Probably.
Just in a note on the
That
side.
annoying guy,
Just in a-
even the coconuts would be like, oh my God, he's that annoying guy in the corner of the island busting out the
I don't
guitar.
know. Is that the great name for your next album? Busking for the coconuts.
You know what? I'll
Listen,
let
mate,
you have that one.
learn guitar first. Listen, mate, I appreciate you coming on.
No, I appreciate having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.